Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/Joshua Revelis and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link down in the description to the page, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. My name is Joshua Revelis. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down with fellow enthusiasts to talk about what's going on in the technology, business, and gaming world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Revelis. I am your host as usual. And today, like I said, is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode due to a little bit of plans that have come up today. But this is not going to be a low quality episode because obviously I do not believe in being, mediocrity in my work. So, like I said, this is a topic I wanted to talk about for a while. Clearly, it's going to be a shorter episode due to the topic because, like I said, the information for this topic has been around for more than a few weeks now. So it's already a little bit old and I can't really provide that much of an insight on it, especially that this is something that's already been out for a while now. Now, I do want to talk about it because it is something that interests me a lot. So we're going to talk about the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3a. And as anybody that knows me, and I've talked about it before on the show, I really like the Pixel phones. They've obviously, in my opinion, in terms of camera quality and I'd say in the aspect of taking a snapshot and having a great photo, no matter what you do, I think that's where the Pixel line excels, essentially. I think that's where the Pixel phones overall are far and above the competition. Like I said, every phone has their own advantages. Obviously, yes, in terms of Android, yes, Samsung is still considered the top of the food chain, and Huawei, albeit given the whole circumstance revolving them, which we already talked about this week, they are still very up there in terms of smartphones. But back to the point, the Pixels. Why are the 3A and 3A XL important? In my opinion, I think that the reason the 3A and 3A XL are pretty important, in my opinion, are due to the fact that it's focusing on the aspects that Google should really focus on the most. Because if you think about it, in my opinion, and I still stand by this, as much as I love my 2XXL, as much as I love this thing, I do believe that it is overpriced for where it's ranged at, because at the time when it came out in 2017, it was competing with a lot of phones that were already considered great phones for that year. Like, let's keep in mind, you had the S8, which shocked the world when it came out because of its design. Like, obviously, yes. And then we go into like the Pixel 2 XL, which obviously, yes, a lot of people liked it. Its color was very popular and had an incredible camera. But that does not mean that it didn't have flaws, which obviously its flaws were its screen, depending on who or when you got it specifically, weren't that good. To be honest, you had the blue tint issue, and then you had the issues where it was slowing down due to the fact that Google doesn't really put a higher clocked version of the Snapdragon chip inside them. They actually put a lower clocked version of it, which is kind of interesting that they would go that route. I would assume you would rather have the higher clocked version for better performance, but oh well. And then we go into the 3 and 3XL, which obviously, as anybody that knows that in 2018, yes, those were considered the flop phones of the year, even though, yes, their cameras were incredible. Obviously, the 3XL's design was not loved by people. It was hated. The design was butt ugly. And I agree with them. The thing was really ugly, and I made fun of it publicly. I just made fun of that phone because it looks disgusting. It looked like a derp face. But you get the point. Pixel, or Google specifically, hasn't been on a good roll recently. The 2XL was a good seller, and the 3 was just horrible. So what makes the 3A and 3A XL stand out? Besides, like, their pretty bad names, I think the main thing that they have going for them is obviously that if you look at the price range that they're at, the 3A starts at $400, and the 3A XL starts at $500. If I'm correct, let me take a quick look at that. It starts at around about like $570 in that range, if I'm correct, based on what I'm reading. Actually, no, my bad. No, $479, my bad. So they start at $479 and $400 respectively for each one. in those price ranges, because obviously most people consider that price range budget to mid-range is what they consider. I think given today's landscape that we have flagship phones costing at already $1,000 starting off, so I would consider those not budget, but I'd say at least mid-range is fair. But if you notice a pattern for phones in that area, there's always 3 areas they compromise the most. The 3 areas are obviously going to be the screen. The screen's not going to be that good. It'll probably be like 1080p, and it'd be an okay panel. Looks all right. The camera is the main thing, because obviously that's what people make fun of is, cheap Android phones, cameras suck. That's the joke that they have. And then obviously the software. Obviously those are the 3 areas where, in my opinion, I think budget phones don't really survive that well. Obviously, yes, their benefit is that they're cheap, they're easy, and they get in the hands of anybody that needs a phone when they need it. And I think what's interesting is that the Pixel 3a did the opposite. So normally phones in the budget, like I'd say budget, mid-range, in that area, they always make sure that they have incredible specs. They always make sure that the specs inside of them, depending on who you get it from, because Samsung's mid-range are all right, but they're obviously improving them. Then you have like the Chinese markets, which put like ridiculous specs. Obviously OnePlus, when they started off, like that's how they were. They put incredible specs and flagship specs inside of budget phones, essentially. And I think it's interesting because obviously if you look at the Pixel 3 and 3a XL, yeah, they're not using a high-end chip. They're using a 670 Snapdragon, which isn't, because obviously if you know flagship Android phones, and if you've been keeping up with the market, and if you're tech savvy, in my opinion, then you would know that the flagship phones are in the 855s right now. Like, obviously we're in the 8 line, so let's call it the 800 series. So the 600 series is just more power efficient, but it's obviously not as powerful as the 800 series. Clearly they're not. And it's interesting given that the Pixel phones, are notoriously known for slowing down after a while due to the fact that, for some, like I said, the chips are underclocked, so they're not performing as efficiently as most people want them to be. If they're performing as efficiently as they should, I think the slowdown issue wouldn't exist at all. But, what can you do, really? I really hope Google fixes that. But where does the Pixel 3a and 3a XL at? Like we said, cameras, screen, and software. Google's software stock Android is incredible. It's very clean, and there's a reason why the Pixel phones are advertised towards iPhone users, because that's why it's considered the iPhone of Android, due to the fact, obviously, yes, it doesn't have the same ecosystem, which I would argue Google technically has a little bit of a better ecosystem given their whole security thing and everything. Like, they have the Google Homes and the connection with Nest and things like that. And obviously Apple has their own music services and things like that, but you get the point, essentially. But we run into a scenario where the software is really good. It's clean Android. You get updates, guaranteed 3 years of updates, and big major updates as well, guaranteed for first. You get it first on Pixel phone. So that means every new Android update, the big update. So obviously we're coming up to Q right now, which is Android 10.0. And yeah, you guys are going to be able to get that for first compared to everybody else. Samsung's not going to get it first. Obviously, if you're part of Google's program, like for phone manufacturers that are part of it, they're able to get those updates early as well. Obviously, Samsung, they're currently working with Google and trying to see how they can get those updates out quicker, but you get the point. And then we go into the camera. The camera is where I think it's the most interesting, due to the fact that it is exactly the same as the Pixel 3, which the Pixel 3 already has a great camera with one lens. Obviously, yes, it doesn't have the same processing power, and it doesn't have the visual core that the Pixels have, because that's what makes the Pixel phones great, is the visual core. Pixels, I'd say specifically the Pixel phones, are notoriously good for their video. Well, not video. What am I talking? Oh my god, we're not even going to talk about that. The phone, basically the photo qualities. The main reason they do so well is because of Google's software. Google's software, for some reason, seems to make any photo look good. And that sounds crazy, but if you look at a lot of the pictures people have taken with a Pixel phone, they come out really good. Essentially, besides Samsung, the Pixel phones are pretty much the only phones that, if you use Snapchat a lot, which I'm assuming a lot of you do, it doesn't take a snapshot, essentially. It's not like the other Android phones where Snapchat takes a snapshot. It doesn't really like I said, it doesn't really use your phone's camera. Like, it just takes a screenshot and then makes it look better. With the Pixel phones, at least, it actually uses the camera, and that's why the Pixel phones, at least when it comes using Snapchat, they come out really good. Obviously, Instagram, notorious, all the photos are gonna look all right because Instagram waters down all the photos no matter what. So there's that. But you get the point that it took a flagship camera and put it on a $400 phone. That to me is very impressive due to the fact that this wasn't really done before. It kind of flips a script because, like I said, if you notice a trend in budget phones, they don't really put like flagship cameras on budget phones. They don't do that. They obviously save those features for the big phones. And obviously, yes, like the screen, it isn't 1080p. It's actually 1440p. And it's a very nice display too, if I do say so. Because my cousins have it. Like, they bought it when it first came out, which that's kind of the reason why I wanted to talk about it, because I have a little bit of experience with the phone. But you get the point. These are the areas that are normally compromised on in the budget to mid-range phone market. But that's why it's always a trade-off. Even with flagship phones, as much as flagship phones are worth so much money, like they're close to $1,000, and they have so many features inside of them, there's still areas that they compromise on. Like, if you look at the trend going on, obviously they took out the headphone jack. You know, bezel-less displays besides Samsung. Samsung's really the only ones that are doing, I'd say, close to bezel-less. Obviously, the little hole in the display is a smart idea. I think I like that better than the notch, to be honest, because I think it's kind of like a mental thing where your brain kind of fills in that space already. And with the notch, you can't really fill that in because it just takes up a good amount of the screen. Obviously, Apple, they're probably not getting rid of the notch anytime soon. Let's be real, they won't. That's not going anywhere. But you get the point that Samsung is doing something unique and creative, and everybody else is just doing the notch. Like, obviously, I hope that the Pixels, based on the rumors, they might end up copying Samsung, or they just might get the panels from Samsung and just get the hole in the display, which I think that would be a phenomenal idea to do that. It'd be impressive. Because I think getting rid of the notch is the first step. Because we all remember the 3XL. That was ugly. Like, let's not go down that route ever again with notches. But you get the point. The Pixel, obviously, yes. One thing we have to keep in mind is that, remember the 3A and 3XL, even though, yes, they are far cheaper than the traditional 3 and 3XL, yes, there are some compromises. Obviously, the flagship specs, you're not going to have those. You're not going to have water resistance. You're not going to have wireless charging, which a lot of people kind of go back and forth with it, but I personally don't care about it, but I know a lot of people do, so it's still important. That could be a deal breaker for you, or maybe it can't not. Obviously, yeah. One thing that the 3AXL and 3A actually have is a headphone jack, which is very interesting that Google would put a headphone jack on its budget phones, but not on its flagship phones. So that's a little bit of a weird call, but okay. Like, you know, what is that trying to say? And obviously, if you looked at a lot of promotional stuff for the 3XL, the 3XL and the 3A, you notice that they're taking shots at the iPhone, clearly, because they're like, $1,000 phone can't take better pictures than a $400 phone. And that, to me, that's interesting. I think it's kind of funny, though, but, you know, that's kind of how Google is usually. They always like taking shots at Apple. But one thing, like I said, is Apple, specifically the iPhones, are really good when it comes to video quality. I've yet to see anybody match the iPhones in terms of video quality. As much as I love the Samsung phones, where we're at right now with the S10 Plus, as much as I love those phones, I am honestly going to be real with you. There's no way they're going to compete with Apple in terms of the video quality. Like, photography wise, when it comes to taking pictures, I believe that yes, they can. I think Samsung has a better camera. I think it just, when you define camera, it encompasses more things than just taking a photo. Obviously, video is a huge component, but to me, I think the 3A and 3XL are a great addition to the market. I want to see how Google responds even further with the reveal of the 4 and the 4XL to see what changes, essentially. Did they learn from their mistakes? And in my opinion, I think they should reduce the price of the 4 if they want it to sell well. If they want the flagship phone to sell well, which I've already said before, Google does not care about selling smartphones. They make them to be enthusiast phones. That's what they're known for. But however, due to the introduction of the 3 and the 3AXL, I think that Google is finally starting to understand, or at least stepping in the right direction that they needed to from the get-go with the Pixel phones. Because like I said, I do not believe the Pixel phone should be competing in the price range of the Galaxies and the iPhone. They shouldn't, because they're not going to win. Like, if you think about it, most people, when they see an Android phone, they're usually just going to go with Samsung because they know the quality is there. And especially that Samsung has fixed a lot of their issues, the biggest one being software, and have made major improvements to it. Yeah, I honestly do believe that Google needs to reevaluate where are they going with this. And I think that the 3A and 3A XL are a great move because it shows that they're able to focus on what they're good at. Like, they made a good display on a good phone, they made great software for it, and they have a great camera. I honestly think Google can get away with a lot of this, and I think you don't need the nice fancy features. Like, you can lower the price to, like, I'd say, in my opinion, the 4XL should be somewhere in the at least $700 range, $800. At least when you go in that range, and at least base price, or not base, but at least max is in that range, yeah, I think you can compete very well. I still think that they should, like I said, I think smartphone prices should go down in general because, like I said, people don't want to spend a lot of money on phones nowadays. Like, there's a reason why the market is, I'm not going to say collapsing, but it's on a decline right now because people aren't upgrading phones every single year. Like, people still do, but as you notice, it gets less and less and less. And that's why you see Apple transitioning from smartphone sales, and they're transitioning to more of software sales and pushing services. Because that's a great idea. Like, you already have all the phones on the market, push services out for those phones, and boom, you make basically just as much money because now you have all those people with those phones on services from you. But that's my 2 cents on it. I really wanted to talk about this. Like I said, this is a shorter episode because there's already so much information that's already been put out there. There's already videos talking about them. People have already done everything you could even imagine with them. I only wanted to provide my opinion and take on it because I'm interested, and I've already told people I'm a huge fan of these phones. I think they're a great addition to the market. I think it's a great step for Google. And yeah, I think this is overall gonna, in theory, I hope it leads to a good shift, and hopefully in October when we see the release of the 4 and 4XL, we see something refreshing and we see maybe a new take from Google on this. But I hope you guys enjoy. Like I said, this episode was shorter due to the fact that I am currently busy today with some very special things that I'll probably post pictures about it on my social media pages because, like I said, this is a very important day for one of my friends. So yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. I know this is going to be very fun for a lot of people. Don't be dumb, guys. Don't do anything stupid. I love you guys to death. You guys take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. Love you guys. Bye.